The First Step by Leo Tolstoy. Chapter 8. There never has been and there cannot be a good life without self-restraint. Apart from restraint, no good life is even imaginable. Every attainment of a good life must begin with it. There is a ladder of virtues, and to climb to the upper steps you must begin with the first. And the first virtue a man must gain, if he wants to gain those that follow, is what the ancients called enkrateia or self-restraint, sound judgment, command of oneself. In Christian teaching, restraint is contained within self-denial, but the order remains the same, and no Christian virtue can be gained without restraint. Not because someone invented such a rule, but because that is the nature of the thing. Self-restraint is the first step of every good life, but even restraint is not reached all at once. It too comes by degrees. Restraint is a man's liberation from his desires, their subjection to sound judgment. But a man's desires are many and various, and for the struggle against them to succeed, he must begin with the basic ones, those on which the more complicated desires have grown, not with the complex ones that grew up on top of them. There are complex desires, for the adornment of the body, for games and amusements, for chatter, for curiosity, and many more. And there are basic desires, gluttony, idleness, carnal love. In the struggle with desires, you cannot begin at the end with the complex ones. You must begin with the basic ones, and in one definite order. That order is set both by the nature of the thing and by the tradition of human wisdom. A man who overeats cannot fight laziness, and a man who overeats and stands idle will never be able to fight the desires of the flesh. That is why in every teaching, the striving toward restraint began with the struggle against gluttony. It began with fasting. But in our world, every serious attitude toward gaining a good life has been so thoroughly lost, and lost for so long, that the very first virtue, restraint, without which the others are impossible, is considered unnecessary, and so the step-by-step path to that first virtue has been lost with it, and fasting has been forgotten by most people, dismissed as a silly superstition that is not needed at all. Yet just as the first condition of a good life is restraint, the first condition of a life of restraint is fasting. A man may wish to be good, may dream of goodness without fasting, but in reality, to be good without fasting is as impossible as walking without standing up. Fasting is a necessary condition of a good life, and gluttony has always been, and still is, the first sign of the opposite, of a life that is not good. And sad to say, that sign fits the life of most people of our time to a very high degree. Look at the faces and figures of the people of our circle and our day. On many of those faces, with their sagging cheeks and chins, their fattened limbs and swollen bellies, lies the ineradicable stamp of a dissolute life. Nor can it be otherwise. Look closely at our life, at what moves most people of our world. Ask yourself, what is the chief interest of that majority? And strange as it may seem to us, trained as we are to hide our real interests and display false, artificial ones, the chief interest in the life of most people of our time is the pleasing of the palate. The pleasure of eating, gorging, from the poorest ranks of society to the richest. Gluttony is, I think, the chief aim and the chief pleasure of our life. The poor working people are an exception only insofar as want keeps them from indulging the passion. The moment they have the time and the means, they follow the higher classes. They get hold of the tastiest and sweetest things and eat and drink as much as they can. The more a man eats, the happier he counts himself, and the stronger and the healthier too. And educated people confirm him in this belief because they look at food in exactly the same way. The educated classes picture happiness and health as tasty, nourishing, easily digested food, and their doctors assure them of it, insisting that the most expensive food, meat, is also the healthiest, though they do their best to hide it. Look at the lives of these people, listen to their talk. What lofty subjects seem to occupy them? Philosophy, science, art, poetry, the distribution of wealth, the welfare of the people, the education of the young. But for the vast majority, all of it is a lie. It occupies them only in passing, between one real business and the next, between breakfast and dinner, while the stomach is full and there is no room to eat more. The one living real interest of most people, men and women alike, is eating, especially after first youth has passed. How to eat, what to eat, when and where. Not one celebration, not one joy, not one dedication or grand opening of anything gets by without food. Watch people traveling, and then you see it plainest. The museums, the libraries, the parliament. How interesting. And where shall we dine? Who sets the best table? Just look at people gathering for dinner, dressed up, perfumed, around a table decked with flowers, how joyfully they rub their hands and smile. If we could look into souls, what are most people waiting for? An appetite for lunch, for dinner. What is the harshest punishment from childhood on? Bread and water. Which tradesman earns the highest wages? The cook. What is the chief interest of the mistress of the house? Where does the conversation drift in most middle-class homes? And if the conversation of the upper circles does not drift the same way, it is not because they are better educated or busy with higher interests. It is only because they have a housekeeper or a butler who handles it all and guarantees their dinners. Take that convenience away, and you will see where their care lies. It all comes down to questions of eating, the price of grouse, the best way to brew coffee, to bake sweet pastries, and so on. People gather whatever the occasion: a christening, a funeral, a wedding, the consecration of a church, a farewell, a homecoming, the celebration of a memorable day, the death or the birth of a great scientist, a thinker, a teacher of morals. People gather occupied, so they say, with the loftiest interests. So they say, but they are pretending. Every one of them knows there will be food, good, tasty food, and drink, and that is the main thing that has brought them together. For days beforehand, animals have been slaughtered and dressed for the occasion. Baskets of goods have been carried from the fine food shops, and cooks, undercooks, kitchen boys, and pantrymen, specially dressed in clean starched aprons and caps, have been at work. Chefs earning 500 rubles a month and more have been at work, giving orders. Cooks have chopped, kneaded, washed, arranged, garnished. A master of the table has worked with the same solemn importance, counting, planning, measuring with his eye like an artist. A gardener has worked on the flowers. Scullery maids have worked. An army of people labors. The products of thousands of working days are swallowed up, and also that the assembled guests can talk about a great teacher of science or morals, or remember a departed friend, or send a young couple off into their new life. In the lower and middle walks of life, it is plain to see that a feast, a funeral, a wedding means gorging. There, that is exactly how the thing is understood. Gorging replaces the very motive of the gathering so completely that in Greek and in French, the same word serves for wedding and for feast. But in the upper circle, among refined people, great art is spent on hiding this, on making it seem that the food is a secondary matter, a mere convention, and they can play that part easily, because for the most part they are sated in the true sense of the word. They are never hungry. They pretend that the dinner, the food, is something they hardly need, even a burden. But it is a lie. Try giving them, instead of the refined dishes they expect, I will not even say bread and water, but porridge and noodles, and see what a storm it raises, and how the truth comes out, that in these gatherings the ruling interest is not the one on display. It is the interest of eating. Look at what people trade in. Walk through a town and see what is for sale, finery, and the materials of gluttony. In essence, this is bound to be so, and cannot be otherwise. Not to think about food to keep this desire within bounds is possible only for the man who eats because he must. When a man stops eating the moment his stomach has enough, then it cannot be otherwise. But if a man has come to love the pleasure of eating, has allowed himself to love that pleasure, finds that pleasure good as the vast majority of people in our world do, the educated included, however much they pretend otherwise, then there is no limit to its growth, no line beyond which it cannot swell. Satisfying a need has limits. Pleasure has none. For the need it is necessary and sufficient to eat bread, porridge, or rice. For the pleasure there is no end of seasonings and refinements. Bread is necessary and sufficient food. The proof is the millions of people who are strong, light on their feet, and healthy, and work hard on bread alone. But bread is better with something on it. It is good to soak bread in the water meat is boiled in. Better still to put vegetables in that water, and better yet several kinds of vegetables. It is good to eat meat too, but meat is better not boiled to pieces, only roasted, and better still lightly roasted in butter, with the blood left in, and the choice cuts. Add vegetables and mustard, and wash it down with wine, red for choice. One is no longer hungry, but one can still manage some fish, if it is dressed with a sauce and washed down with white wine. It would seem nothing more could go down, rich or tasty, but there is still room for something sweet. Ice cream in summer, in winter stewed fruit, preserves, and the like. And there you have a dinner, a modest dinner. The pleasure of that dinner can be increased much, much further. And it is increased, and the increase has no limit. Appetizers to whet the hunger, side dishes, desserts, ingenious combinations of tasty things, flowers and table decorations, music during dinner. And the astonishing thing is that people who gorge every day on dinners beside which Belshazzar's feast, the feast that called down the miraculous warning, is nothing, are naively certain that they can be leading a moral life, all the while.